Hi Nick, I'm joined with Nick Entwistle. Firstly, let me compliment you on your surname, cracking surname you've got there. Nick is from 1 Minute Briefs, which, if you don't know, is a creative platform where, well, let you tell a bit more, Nick. Let you introduce what Creative 1 Minute Briefs is all about.
Firstly, hello, and it's great to be on this on the podcast today. 1 Minute Briefs. It started off a few years ago as a little idea. It actually started off at university, and all it was a thing to just get us away from. We had weeks on a brief. Obviously, in our industry, we don't get weeks. We don't get that luxury anymore. But I also didn't like the luxury then because it made me overthink and procrastinate and things like that. And I'd always leave it to the last minute anyway.
Definitely.
So we just forced ourselves to do what we called at the time, and didn't really know what one was, a 1 minute brief. And it's between the two of us that started it off. Some ideas were really good. Some ideas were really silly that you would never have put down if you got given an hour or a day or a week.
Yeah.
But because of that, it sort of, even though it's a restriction, it actually frees your mind to be instinctive and actually the most creative than you'd ever be. So as we grow a bit older, we start to have doubts in our own mind. We doubt ourselves before the person says that's not a good idea, that's at your work or something. So we took that to Twitter. I think it was 2012. Just posting it on. We didn't know what Twitter was about, and after we got about 100 followers, we started to open it up to a 1 minute brief of the day and just see if anyone would enter. We got probably one person entering the first week, but what we realised then was that because people are entering into us, they're actually telling their mates about it, and by the nature of them posting it. So that is why it's grown to such an extent, and it's now collectively, when people share the 1 minute ideas, we can do it for brands and causes. So collectively, let's say we get 100 or 200 entries, retweeting every single one out to 28,000 followers that we've got now, then that's huge reach. And obviously, as I say, because they're tweeting their own followers before it even hits us, the reach of it is absolutely huge. So that's why a lot of brands and causes get involved with us now. So it's a very, I could say so much about OMB, which I probably will go on to, but that's a bit of a basic overview, I think.
Yeah, no, really, really interesting. It's an interesting concept generally that I think sometimes when you're working on a high value project, you associate that with time rather than the actual output. And I think it is human nature to feel like until I get close to that deadline, I've still got all this time. And you almost feel like you need to fill that time. And I'm totally with you. I remember doing uni briefs myself, and it's almost like until you get in that last week or at least that day before, this isn't real yet. So I love the concept, and I think you probably already got those ideas so early on, but you feel like, well, I need to spend all this time, whereas actually bringing the time a bit shorter almost forces you to, these are the good ideas, let's run with them.
Yeah, and if you've only got a certain amount of time, like you say, you do have to go with something. Sometimes you might need to get something out the next day, or sometimes I've done reactive stuff before where I want to get something in the paper the very next day. You need to the idea just comes to you sometimes as well, or you might think of nothing all day and then be driving home.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, that's the one. Or on occasion, I mean, I've done it in big previous agencies I've worked in. I've done it whilst I'm being briefed on when we're in the meeting. I'll be writing things down, listening to what's being said, and then a certain word or a selection of words or the exact thing that we want to say from the brief, I will try and interpret that in a different way. And we did a huge pitch for a company, and I wrote down these 2 words, and it actually became. We spent 2 weeks on the pitch. Actually, it was a really big one, but I genuinely wrote down this campaign idea whilst I was being briefed, and it stuck on the wall. We had a wall full of ideas, but it just stayed there, and it was the one that won the pitch and became the whole campaign, TV and everything. So we're not saying that it's always the way, because it isn't. Because the way I actually use it in my everyday work, I would write down whatever's in my head. So 50 ideas into a document, and then delete, and sort of process of elimination. And that's what happened with that one. And it just so happens that it literally was the first idea that became this huge, it's hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of work, this one. So don't doubt your actual instincts as well.
Yeah, I think also by sometimes having more time, I think the best ideas are often the ones that you do question a bit and think, oh, is that right to do that? Or is that the safest idea? Perhaps we should present some other ideas that are a bit safer, a bit more, not as far out there. Are people going to get it? Whereas actually, if you're forced to be quick, what comes to your mind first is quite often the right one.
Yeah, absolutely. I would never doubt your first idea. A lot of people sort of think, oh, that's silly. I mean, one idea I do refer to is that someone one day chucked out an idea in a meeting. I don't know how it worked, but they said, "Oh, what about compare the makeup?"
Yeah,
because it sounds like compare the market, and it's a silly idea that you probably. It's one of those that if you were in a meeting or you were presenting something, you'd feel a bit silly doing it because you might just get laughed at. But you've also got to have the right people in the room to have the faith in that, because, like you say about the safe idea, if you were thinking of the safe idea, you'd probably just say, you'd probably turn that idea away. And as we see now, it's their entire campaign. It has been for the last 10, 15 years, I don't know how long.
It's totally lasted. And actually, even when you see meerkats in the zoo, you think of the brand, don't you? You think of compare the market. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, that's a great example, actually. And I think you do need that confidence and self-belief to sell the idea, because if you had that floating around your head and you thought, I can't get this out of my head, I think compare the meerkat would be a good angle, but I don't know, they might laugh at me, they might. But then actually, look how it's taken off, look how it's so different to your boring traditional kind of insurance related ads.
Yeah, well, I've just seen on TV, it's not the best one, but it's the seal of approval, and it's for, I think it's for Virgin Media. Funnily enough, it was an idea that we pitched as a team for Ron Seal a few years ago. Never went to pitch because it was a bit of a silly one, but the idea that a little seal was looking up at the fence that you were doing or something, it would be silly, but a bit of fun, and
no, I love it.
So that sort of thing. So, but yeah, let me just turn my email notifications.
And I think also having the humour, having the silly is what's remembered. I think it's so easy to be safe. It's a lot more brave to go down the more humorous route, the more
people need a laugh as well. The stuff you see on TV at the moment, it's just so it's all very much in line with the times, rather than unless you look at something like Just Eat, where it's just it's different and it's rapping about something and really like. So I think that sometimes just humour, if you can make people laugh, then great. I think that's what I try and do with my work, is creating emotion. So whether it is making someone laugh, cry, be sad, then they'll feel compelled to act. So I think sometimes your impulsive ideas, if it makes you think something and excited for it and whatever, then that will reflect. If you sort of go with that safe idea, it will sort of just be content that you're just chucking at TV or social, or no, if you don't feel anything for it, then why would anyone else? So you're just sort of filling a hole for no reason. And
I think you definitely see business to customer brands obviously adapting, approaching, taking this approach. What about business to business when it's more service related? I mean, it's still a person that you sell into. Do you think they could learn a bit from the whole approach and be less polished, break it down and actually recognize the fact that they're speaking to people? It's people at the end of the business that are making decisions, and move away from a bit more traditional marketing advertising?
Yeah, I think so. I think I did a talk at the B2B World Fest actually with the drum, and I did that alongside some people that work in the world of B2B, and we've done stuff with the likes of JCB, who will be targeting trades managers and building companies, etc. And the stuff we did with JCB was humour, and it was around their 75th birthday, and exactly what you're saying. That's what people want to see. They want funny stuff. They don't want a bland leaflet, or because it doesn't capture your attention. If something lands on your, or a door drop or something, if it lands on your door and it's just something completely different, and it comes out and it's like this long or whatever, and then it stands out. And I think that's the most important, to differentiate from your competition and do something different. Sometimes that's a quick idea. Sometimes, it can be something really well thought out, or research, something you found about that company or something from a lot of research that you've put in. I think that's so key. What I don't want people to think is that, as some people do, is that we think that we can just solve advertising in 1 minute, but that's not the case. And
well, it's years of practice, isn't it, as well? So actually, I think if that meerkat did come up within 5 minutes, but what's been the financial reward of it is putting the value on it as well, isn't it? And then the execution as well, having the ideas to take that forward. So I think you've got to take that out of the equation and look at the value of it.
That's true, the value. I find it very difficult, the way I work. Some people do work to time. Some creatives work in different ways, where they will come up with one idea in a day, and but they're ruling stuff out in their own heads. So I'd rather fill a wall. But the value of an idea, in my opinion, shouldn't necessarily be based on time.
I agree.
But then how do you actually value it? Unless you just say, right, I'm going to give you a set price, give me something great.
Yeah.
Then it might take longer than what the time would. Essentially. But hopefully, like you say, with practice and working in this way for so long, you do feel quite confident that you are going to come up with something reasonably good within a certain time frame.
And this is where creatives really bring their value and their worth, in my opinion. So it's very difficult as a business, especially if you are B2B and you're very traditional, you've always done things in a certain way, but you want to change, but you've got this board that you're trying to convince to. And that's where the creatives have really got to come in, challenge things, look at it from a completely different angle, obviously be mindful of your audience, your customers, and you can't go so off radar that it doesn't make any sense. But that's where delivering that creativity, having the confidence to back it and go with it, is where great things happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, the confidence to just do something different. And also, I don't know how it works with you, but if you can sort of collaborate and pull people together in the team and push these ideas out. And I think as a business as well, if you're up for doing those types of things, it reflects well on the rest of the people, and they're all wanting to chip in with ideas more.
Definitely.
It becomes more of an exciting atmosphere. I've worked in competitive environments as well, where people want to come up with the best ideas and stuff, and that's changed a little bit for me now with OMB and Bank of Creativity and things, where the competitiveness, I don't necessarily have it myself, although I have more belief now, but I think fostering an environment where people can feel safe to share certain ideas, I feel is more important. And I think that people, like, we've got one person on our feed who draws scribble comics each day. Submission, and it's completely different in style to anyone else, but it's also valid at the same time as someone else doing a design for something, because it's just their way of interpreting what that brief means. So once you get a load of different views on it, I know I'm going off on a tangent a little bit there, but once you get a load of different views and people feeling like they can be part of it and share ideas without being scared of, oh, that's a stupid idea or something. That's good within working environments like yours.
No, I totally agree. And I think sometimes you've almost got somebody who comes up with the start of an idea, and then somebody else knows where they're trying to go with it and says, I know exactly what you mean there, I love it. Perhaps if we just change that word into this, rather than it being too competitive, where it's almost like, oh, that could have been a good idea, but I've got to promote mine now. Whereas actually that collaboration, definitely. And when you feel more comfortable that you can just say anything and you're all in it together, that's when I think the best ideas happen as well, rather than it's not a competitive thing. It is working together, and that gives you that kind of sounding block before you take the idea further as well, to run it past. What do you think? Yeah, it is crazy, but I can see it's got some value to it.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's what our community's become about, more so than the ideas themselves, really. Just people feeling part of something. The community spirit is the main. It's just the main thing now. People making friendships on and offline, which goes above and beyond. And then in turn, the ideas keep improving when people keep getting involved. And for example, the people that have done it for years, it's very hard not to have them winning each day, because they've got a way of thinking that they've seen stuff in the past that works best, and it's always the simplest stuff, and now consistently produce that stuff, so it does improve your creative thinking as well. Yeah,
definitely it does. And actually it gets into a bit of almost like a way of thinking, actually that connects with that, and it is practice. The more you're doing it, the more creative, the more time you've got, not too much time, working in that way is definitely good, which leads me on to my next question, really. How do you judge the winners? Is that solely down to you? Are the brands themselves involved in that process?
It's quite open sometimes. If we're doing the just for fun briefs, I would tend to look at them. I'd be bearing in mind the amount of retweets and likes it's got on Twitter that I've seen throughout the day. Same on Facebook. Facebook's a bit of a funny one when you've got an album. The reach of Facebook organically is not the best, so I try not to judge it too much on that. But I think just as a creative director, I will then go in and as if I'm being a creative director and choose and filter out the ones that I think are the most simple. Or sometimes it's something that's just completely different that may not ever happen, but it's just made me laugh or something. I think that's important as well, not just necessarily thinking of it as if what would a client buy, but what actually makes me laugh. What I want to see on that feed if it was a brand using it. So I try and judge it in that way. And when we're doing it with clients, sometimes I will help them shortlist. Otherwise, they actually share it with their own team. They just share their whole album across on an email or something. They'll pick, each of them will pick the top 5 or something like that. We usually do it on like about a 10% of overall. Let's say we get 150 entries, we want a top 15. So people maybe will share their ideas to whoever's collating them, and then come back to me with a short list, and then overall winner at the same time. I'm sometimes involved in that process, sometimes not. It's quite open.
And I guess when you're setting the brief, you're already thinking about, you can already predict some of the responses you're going to get. So you're already thinking, we're definitely going to get some entries down this line. Are you still because you've been running this now for some years, but are you still, would you say, receiving entries that you think, wow, I hadn't even thought about that, that's not an angle I had in mind? Or have you already, are most of the entries something that you thought, yeah, I kind of predicted that would be an outcome?
I think it's actually important sometimes to get some of those ones that are predictable out, because it is the one, you know, sometimes it's your first thought, and a few people might enter similar things because of that.
Yeah.
But the process of actually doing that and actually emptying your mind of these ideas, then another one will come, and then people can enter as many times as they want as well.
Yeah.
So, but then sometimes the better ideas come out, or sometimes you'll have the best idea first, and then the ones that you come up with next will be not quite as effective. But some of this stuff, I mean, the thing that I'm doing, I'm running today with WWF and Voice for the Planet. The idea that came out of that came randomly from a guy called Z Anwar, and we did a brief with WWF UK, and one of his submissions was football team brand logos without the nature in them. And I saw that and I was like, oh my God, that is so good. And I had to try and help make that happen. So I spoke to WWF that day and said, please let us do something with this. And we created a quick, they said, create a document, because they had a board meeting the next day. Sorry, that day, I think.
Yeah.
So I put something very quickly together. And then next thing, they came back and said, we want this to be our big campaign for this year. So, and it was just that, it was just something you've never seen before.
Yeah.
Nature and animals out of the logos, I've never seen it. But so many brands use animals and trees and plants in the logo.
Yeah.
That if everyone collectively actually did that, then it would be amazing. So that's a good example. And obviously it was postponed last year because of COVID. But as we learn to live in a different way, now's the time. 1 month today, we're hopefully going to get a lot of brands on board with doing that. But yeah, some of the stuff that you see is, some people have won international awards off them. People have won holidays, money prizes that we do each day. Yeah, some of the stuff, it's that moment when you think, I wish I'd have thought of that one.
Yeah. But you've given the platform for those ideas. I think without the 1 minute brief, without the platform, without that community, where would these ideas have ever been able, they wouldn't have been able to necessarily reach the brand. I think even if you had those ideas, would you do anything with it? You know, they wouldn't have necessarily set themselves the brief. And I think more than ever, over the last 12 months, it's very tough for students who are graduating. They've got these ideas, they can't necessarily get into job, people aren't recruiting. So it gives them the platform to keep the confidence up, to keep, because that's what I think is a real struggle when you've left uni and you've been working on briefs that have been set for you and you want to keep your skills going, but to try and set yourself a brief with no deadline is pretty much impossible. So I think that gives a nice in-between for people to still test the creativity as well.
Yeah, we've noticed that, I mean, we do get a lot of students who've got, it's actually, the most people is actually 24 to 35.
Is it?
A lot of people don't think, because they think it's probably a bit more sort of student based, but it's but for students and graduates, especially at this time, it's a great way. I mean, I do talks at universities and things as well, but it's a great way for people to gain contacts in the industry. Like say, confidence is important. Setting yourself a brief, sort of doing it over a couple of days, and then you just come up with, and then like say, where does it actually go?
Where does it go? You've not necessarily got the followers to share it with.
Yeah, with Twitter, you know, let's say we do advertise, one we did the other day, advertise yoga mats. People are coming up with those over a day, and who knows, one of the brands might pick it up. And we've seen we've seen all sorts of brands like someone liked it was Vision Direct spoke to us yesterday because we did coloured contact lenses as a brief, and people got retweeted, and that's a boost for anyone, for a brand to like or retweet the post. And like sometimes I look at it and now it's not that I take it for granted or anything, but sometimes like a brand will like it something and it's sort of, I'll keep scrolling, but think about it, these brands are noticing what we're doing and what these people are creating, and for individuals that is a huge boost in your day and creatively.
Massively.
And who knows? And some of these things, for example, we did one with Guinness. Someone posted it as part of an online pub brief that we did at the start of the first lockdown, and it went viral. It went viral over 24 hours. This all it was a cream sofa, and it said "stay at home" underneath, and it looked like the pint. And
because I remember seeing it, and I thought it was actually Guinness that had come up with it at the time.
Yeah, well, that's it. A lot of people did, and I think that's key to what is a good idea. If it feels like absolutely on brand, and what someone like that could do. So it went viral in the first place. Adweek, Ads of the World featured it and said, "This is the ad Guinness. This is the best Guinness ad ever," or something.
Amazing.
That Guinness can do. Guinness obviously noticed this, and I ended up speaking to them and the creator, and it then got put into posts, the sort of redesigned slightly. To post on on the Guinness channels across the world, so reinforcing the stay-at-home message, and then it was featured. I mean, it was on LinkedIn. It was absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, no, I definitely saw it popping up in a few places, and I'd seen it before I associated it back to 1 minute briefs, which I think in a way is probably a compliment really to the success of it. So also with that particular campaign, we were in a weird place, we still are as a nation. So it wasn't only associating with the product, it was the message behind it. So it was really clever. And actually it was so simple. So it did tick the box in terms of the 1 minute. And it was definitely on brand. I loved that one. I thought it was great.
It's one of those that you just think, I mean, I spoke to the person themselves about it on the phone, and they just posted it out there. Absolutely no idea that it was going to go like that. You just never know something will catch on like that. And that's why it's important to, when you do have an idea, just share it and post it out. Don't try and keep it. It's quite easy as creatives to feel guarded, and some people with OMB might think, "Well, I don't want to share this idea in case someone says something." But the person got paid for doing that, like a good amount, and I think it's better to actually just share what's in your head and see. I always say, "What's the best that could happen?" That's how I live by every brief. Or, for example, this WWF thing today, we've taken the nature out logos. I want Twitter to take their bird off display picture for the day. I want people playing I want England playing a football match without the 3 lions on the thing, and that's how big I would think. If we don't achieve that, then that's okay. But every single brief that I do, I try and think of what the best scenario would be. I think that positivity sort of reflects on OMB and what we can actually achieve. And we've seen it with a few things that we've done. We can achieve these big things, but that's a collective effort.
Yeah, I think equally also, as you mentioned, don't be guarded with your ideas, as well as thinking what's the best that can happen. You almost want to think, well, what's the worst that can happen? If I put this idea out there, nobody likes it. Okay, might not get a retweet, I might not win. So what? The next one might be brilliant. That's where you also want to think, what's the worst that can happen? Just go for it and just trial it, and your confidence will grow, and you might not be recognized this time, but your next one might be amazing.
So some people come on to the feed and say, "Oh, this one's won already," or might as well. It's always funny. It's always people having a laugh, but I might as well not even enter now with this one.
Yeah.
But even if you feel like yours isn't as good as what you may have seen, I try and encourage people to just enter. You know, sometimes I'll enter myself, and I won't, and I know that I've seen better ones, but I've got something in my head, and I just want to just share it, and even if it's just a scribble or on a bit of paper or something, then great.
And also things change, don't they? So actually brands do evolve. Once you've had an idea, you need to change it. So if you've seen something that's brilliant, but you've got a different idea, that might be the next stage for the ad or the sequence or whatever. So yeah, get it out there. What do you think people's reasoning is behind entering? Do you think it's partly because for me, mentioning about the one who was successful with Guinness, and you mentioned the financial reward, I'd imagine for the entrant, that came secondary to the pride, the absolute excitement and possibilities that campaign opened. Do you think people enter for the exposure? Do they enter because it's part of a community? You might not know. Do people talk? Do they comment to you what they get from it?
Yeah, I've sort of have put this out there about like what it was like for the first OMB, and people actually, I think it's quite a daunting thing for people to enter their first ever one amongst a community that keeps entering each day.
Yeah.
And sort of, I'm actually having issues with Twitter at the minute because I'm not seeing people that are posting for the first ever time when they've got a small following. For some reason, I'm having blocked and they're invisible to me.
Even when they're mentioning you?
Yeah. And I only see them if someone else randomly happens to see that they've entered and not had a retweet. So that's something really important to me, and I'm speaking to Twitter at the minute in terms of it's very important their first ever go that they don't get ignored, because if they do, probably think, oh, my entry wasn't even good enough to get a retweet. Probably don't know how it works because everyone gets a retweet.
Yeah.
So that's massively important. But I think people a lot of the time now just enter to have a laugh and feel part of something, and I think that's why it is successful in terms of more people entering each day, and it doesn't just die out.
Yeah.
Because it could do if it got boring and faceless. I share gifs and stupid, like if someone forgets the Twitter handle, I'll say I'll send a silly goose gif, or just stupid things to keep the people just laughing, and people are tweeting each other and getting involved, getting other people involved in the briefs. And I think it's about being welcomed into a community.
Yeah.
So there's no ego in OMB, which sort of contradicts with the industry itself. I think there's a lot of ego in a lot of the advertising world, and a bit of snobbery in some cases. And I think there's no room for that in OMB.
Yeah.
It's all about, and there's also a lot of negativity online on social. So in OMB, you've got just constant positivity and pushing each other up, and obviously people feel proud to be winners and they have it in the bio.
Yeah.
Update it every time that they get a new win, 19 wins today, or that type of thing.
Amazing.
But, so it's great you have got that competitiveness, and you do want to win at the end of the day, and there's prizes sometimes as well, and you do want to win, and no doubt about that. But when people win, there is no, people are retweeting, liking it, saying well done. It's unbelievable, actually.
That's brilliant. That's great. And I think actually, so you've grown 1 Minute Briefs from obviously a startup business where you had no following through to a massive, big power platform on social media. I noticed you won an award just recently, probably one of many, for actually use of social media. But I think that's something that brands can learn from in general. Don't become so big, so untouchable, because once you lose that touch with your audience and that feeling of you can actually speak to people, I think that's when you've lost that respect to an extent.
Yeah, I think it needs to have, I'm not actually seen much myself, like you see me here, but on the feed, because I'm just a stopwatch. But people do get the personality, and they respond, and they say Nick in their tweets and like that. So although sometimes other people are running it, I tend to try and run the Twitter feed, but I am getting help on various channels like Instagram. So try and push everyone back into Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's important not to become faceless and just become a business. It's always been the same. It's, even though we're working with more brands and things now, and obviously that we've got to balance that between it being a fun thing. But literally the first ever 1 minute brief was to create an ad for such and such.
Yeah.
So it never ever changed. Every single day for the last 8-9 years, the daily brief never ever changed. It's to create an ad or a poster for this or this. If it's advertise coffee as just a laugh, then great. If it's advertised coffee with Nescafe and you can give hundreds of pounds of prizes,
yes,
and a year's supply of coffee, then even better. So
when you do set a brief and it's as you've mentioned, coffee, or you give a product, do people introduce their own brands to it?
Yeah, they do sometimes. It's funny because sometimes it's a good measure of how much brand affinity is associated with a product.
Yeah.
For example, we did one for Alphabet Spaghetti.
That was the one I was thinking of. I couldn't think what brand it was, and everyone was doing Heinz, weren't they?
Yeah, and people just automatically think of a Heinz thing, and that's obviously credit to the brand for monopolising that sort of sector. But yeah, it's interesting. People create stuff, their own sort of spec work for brands, and stuff we did for coloured contact lenses yesterday, and then sometimes brands notice and retweet and share and get involved. Innocent tweet us, and
do they?
We've done stuff. I think the first time we did stuff with KFC, and then we ended up working with them as collaborating. So you've obviously got to be careful in terms of what you say with brands, but people are the community is very respectful, and you don't see any negativity because of the way it sort of self maintains itself, because you see what other people are doing, and it's up to them what content they put out, because it's going out on their own feed. So
I think in that respect, if it's got association with a brand and their brand's being talked about, it's down to them to make a positive association and use that audience to capture more, rather than see it as a negative, or some of the ideas wouldn't be anything that they perhaps run with, but actually it doesn't matter. It's giving them some exposure.
Yeah, well, that happened. I mean, we did one with Pringles, and a couple of people, Pringles is a great brand. It's just the fun brands that I think people love to. People love McDonald's, Burger King, and that type of thing. But Kellogg's and Pringles, and then Pringles got in touch with us randomly one day, and then we ran one with them. So actually posting stuff out like that is beneficial.
Yeah.
Because it can start to create connections. I mean, today's example, we're literally asking people to change people's brands and encourage people to get involved a month today. So hopefully this will start to, if someone does it for, here's an example.
Can they pick whoever they want today? Is that the idea? Anyone who's using nature or animal?
Yeah, so, I mean, let's say it was Twitter and someone chooses that, and then we can say, what do you reckon on Twitter? Are you going to do it? Basically. So it sort of it creates I mean, I could do that myself, but it's nice that it's going to come from people that have thought of the brand and hope.
What ones like Funky Pigeon? I mean, that's got an animal in the name. What are they?
That'd be great if they got involved and took theirs off for the day, or created a social post without it and said they're supporting such and such.
Yeah.
And I'm posting out some letters to the previous people that have pledged to be involved already. So hopefully, and even on the day, if people do start doing it, hopefully and they might tag some other brands in, and hopefully they'll do it as well.
We might have to go the other way, because we haven't got anything in our logo like that. We might have to introduce one in. We'll have to do it in reverse. That's
something that we've talked about, is that I mean, that's an interesting way of thinking about it, is adding something to it.
We'll borrow the Twitter bird while they take it down or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's other ways people can share their own support by just tweeting and saying this is what's happening today and things as well. But there are also some things that we've had where people have taken a bit of out of like Amazon. Let's say for example, you could take the word out as if it was the rainforest coming out there and just leave the smile. So there's different ways of doing it, maybe. But yeah, it's all about just showing support and hopefully just generating as big a buzz as possible on that day.
I love it. Yeah.
And see if we can kick that off a little bit today. It's a shame it got postponed last year, because it was really gaining momentum.
Well, it's good though, because that momentum already, people hopefully know about it a bit, and you'll get even more engagement from the ideas already embedded. They've probably already been thinking about it.
That's true.
And it opens you out to so many possibilities. There are so many once you start thinking about it, like you mentioned, in the football area, and there's so many brands that do have reference to animals and nature.
Yeah, right across the world.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's an exciting one. Well, it's been fascinating. It's been really interesting. I've obviously followed 1 minute briefs for many years. Yes.
Well, I got this because we did a collaboration with PD Tips, but I'll speak to them and say, take that off for the day.
Yeah, definitely. Just take it off.
That's all you need to do.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we look forward to continuing to see your success and being on board, and we'll have to get some of our designers involved. That was another question, actually, just before we come to a conclusion. Do you, if designers are working within agencies or in-house within companies and they're entering 1 minute briefs, I think it's a nice way to showcase some of the skills within the company. Do they get involved? Do they back it as well? If it's a designer that works at a particular agency, do they start to retweet, get involved as well?
Yeah, we get people. We've got all sorts of people working in agencies, and we're not. I know you get a lot of agencies that just don't want to work with other agencies, etc. So but we very much want to big anyone up. So anyone that sort of, as an agency, wants to. Sometimes agencies themselves post stuff. We've even had agency of the year, because we run awards each year. We've even had OMB agency of the year. Because several agencies post from their own channels.
Are they allowed to do that? So are you allowed to enter as an agency? It doesn't have to be an individual?
Yeah. However you want, really. So, and then that kind of, if other people were to post it into a certain place or send it to the person who does the social, we've done this today and had a go. And it's just nice to create a connection, but design, all sorts of people get involved. There are some agencies, I think, that where people feel worried about. I mean, it can literally take a minute. You can literally have a little break, or a lunch or something, and scribble something out and post it. There are some people that think stop doing it because they've got a new job and they don't like it. I don't know why they would not like it, but mostly people just answer anyway, and it can be just a scribble, or you can do it at the end of your day or in your lunch or before.
I think also as an agency, you're always looking at your own promotional content, and if it gives you something that you can absolutely share, because sometimes client work's confidential or it's not going to go out, whereas this can really be an opportunity to showcase your talent rather than looking at it as a waste of time.
Yeah, and just collaborating and just showing your personality that you are creative, and you just want to be involved in something else as well. and also off that, you know, you can get more contacts, and
Yeah,
who
totally.
knows, by just being visible, someone might see you, click on your website, and you might have a job vacancy, and someone wants it from our community, or what you do, for example, someone might have a need for that we can't offer.
Yeah.
So they would go straight to you or come to us, and then we would go to you because you've been visible and entered. I say this to students and grads as well. Say, look, I can't just send work your way if something comes to me or I see something on Twitter.
Yeah.
You have to be visible and be the ones to be seen on our feed. And then if someone emails me and says, I need a junior copywriter or something like that, I know exactly who to go to. Or if as an agency, there is a company that's doing what you do, or a film production company that gets involved with us, I'm instantly going to just go to them. Yeah.
Well, it's like, prove it to me. You need to show it to me. Don't make me work to find out what you do. Get involved, and that shows what you do then.
Yeah, because otherwise you're searching around, and it's a good way of connecting with the right people, and also just entering and connecting with people. You never know what that could turn into. Yeah,
I think it's a good way generally. I think majority of people are working remotely at the moment, and actually just a 1-minute brief, there's no pressure, just let's go for it as a team, we're all creatives, let's see what we come up with. It's just a nice thing that takes away from, there's no client at the end of the day, is there, that's going to be changing your ideas. You just get to submit it. So I think it's great. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to brief our team on this one for today. What's the deadline then on each day?
Yeah, we usually run it to about 6 p.m. British time, because we do get people around the world, but probably on today's brief we'll extend it till 8, given what it is, and sometimes when we have got branded ones, we tend to, if we feel that we need to, we'll extend it a little bit. Usually around between 9 and 10 a.m. when we post it on our pinned tweet. But yeah, I mean, today, you might work with some brands that have some nature in their logos, and if you pass that message on and they get involved, that could be a great way of being involved too. So a lot of brands do that you don't even think of, or people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so do you will you be announcing the winner this evening or tomorrow morning?
I'll have to speak to WWF about that and sort of liaise with them on which ones we think. Maybe I'll do a short list for it before, but I remember, do you know what? I'm going to look at my phone in a minute, and it's going to be absolutely full of entries because we're on this. And I remember last time we did it, I'm pretty sure I was sat in my dressing gown all day, and the feed was just relentless. There were just hundreds, and I didn't get out my dressing gown all day. It wasn't glamorous. It's not glamorous.
It's acceptable that now, though, isn't it? It's fine. You can be in your leisure.
Last year, before all this happened.
You've got no excuse then.
So, but yeah, I wouldn't change it.
Brilliant. Well, I shall let you have a look at all your entries. It's quite nice now because you're going to have a load to look through, and it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and there's definitely going to be things that we will look to collaborate and work with you on in the coming weeks.
Right.
I look forward to catching up with you again soon. Thanks a lot for your time, Nick.
Thanks for having me. See you soon.